You know that feeling deep down that something's just not right with our economy? That constant hum of anxiety, this sense of instability, and frankly, unfairness? Well, what if I told you the key to understanding it all doesn't come from the usual suspects, the famous economists we always hear about? What if the answer has been hiding for almost 1,000 years, waiting in the words of a thinker most of us have never even heard of? Come on, let's find out.
Yeah, it's a question that's on so many of our minds, right? Everywhere you look, you see this massive gap between the rich and everyone else. You see markets that feel like a casino, and there's just this growing sense of distrust in the whole system. It really does feel like it's all teetering on the edge. But the big question is, why? Well, the answer might be a lot older and a lot weirder than you think.
Okay, so when we start looking for answers, our brains usually jump to the big two, right? You've got Adam Smith on one side, Karl Marx on the other. And look, for centuries, they've basically set the terms of the debate. But what if their frameworks, what if they just aren't enough for the problems we're facing today? What if a more powerful, more relevant perspective comes from somewhere completely, totally unexpected?
All right, let's jump in our time machine. But we're not going to industrial Europe with its smokestacks and factories. Nope. We're going way further back to the glittering heart of the Islamic Golden Age. Because that's where we're going to meet a thinker who, and this is wild, saw our modern problems coming nearly 900 years ago. So I want you to picture the world around the year 1100. Over in Europe, things are, well, they're pretty fragmented, kind of struggling through what we call the Dark Ages. But in the Islamic world, it's a completely different story. It is a global powerhouse. You've got cities like Baghdad that are just bustling centers of immense wealth, incredible science, and really sophisticated finance. This is the world that shaped our thinker, a world of booming trade, dizzying wealth, and really rapid change. And this is our guy, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Now, al-Ghazali wasn't just one thing. You couldn't put him in a box. He was a brilliant philosopher who could debate the nature of the soul. He was a sharp-as-a-tack jurist who understood the nitty-gritty of contracts and law. And he was a deep theologian who explored the mysteries of faith. And it's this incredible combination of skills that let him see the economy for what it really is. Not just a machine of numbers, but a very, very human system.
And this led him to ask what is, I think, a terrifyingly relevant question. He looked around at his own wealthy, successful, booming society, and he saw a poison lurking just beneath the surface. He asked, what happens when a civilization gets rich faster than it gets wise? I mean, just let that sink in. A society obsessed with money, but totally losing its moral compass. Sound familiar?
So, what exactly was the problem he was seeing? Well, Al-Ghazali pinpointed a few key things he called economic sins. And these weren't just bad financial practices. He saw them as behaviors that would literally corrode a society from the inside out.
Okay. His starting point was, for the time, a pretty radical idea. He said, money is just a tool. That's it. He compared it to a mirror. Think about it. A mirror has no value by itself, right? Its only value comes from what it reflects. Well, Al-Ghazali argued money is exactly the same. Its purpose isn't to be piled up and worshipped. Its only job is to reflect a fair exchange of goods and labor between people. And that insight leads directly to his first huge warning, hoarding. When money is just hoarded, stuffed under a mattress or locked away in a vault, taken out of circulation, he said it's not just useless, it's actually destructive. That money isn't paying wages, it isn't funding new businesses, it's not supporting families. It's basically wealth that has quit its job. And listen to the incredible metaphor he used for this. He called hoarding freezing the bloodstream of society. Wow, I mean, what a powerful image, right? He got it. He understood that an economy, just like a body, needs circulation to live. When you hoard wealth, you're not just making yourself rich. You're giving the whole system a heart attack. You're creating scarcity where there doesn't need to be any. And here's the crazy part. His critique of some medieval noble hiding gold in a chest, it is the direct ancestor of our arguments today about offshore bank accounts and massive wealth concentration. The technology is different, sure, but the underlying behavior is exactly the same. It's capital that's been pulled out of the real economy where it can't do any good. His second big warning was about speculation. Now, he didn't see this as some clever investment strategy. To him, it was something much darker. It was making a profit from someone else's suffering. It was about manipulating prices or taking advantage of a crisis to get rich. He had a name for it, profit without contribution. And he saw it as a disease, a contagion that spreads through the entire market.
So when Al-Ghazali was warning about merchants who would buy up all the grain to create an artificial shortage and then jack up the price, he was describing the exact same toxic logic that drives today's speculative housing bubbles, predatory lending schemes, and, yeah, all the crisis profiteering we see. It is the same human impulse, just turbocharged with modern technology. And his third warning, this one was aimed right at the top, at the government itself. See, rulers back then would often debase their currency. That means they'd secretly mix cheaper metals into the gold and silver coins to stretch their budget. Al-Ghazali didn't pull any punches. He called it exactly what it was: theft, a complete betrayal of the public's trust by the very people in charge. So you've got hoarding, speculation, and government corruption. For Al-Ghazali, these weren't just three separate problems. No, they were all symptoms of a much deeper disease, the complete and total collapse of trust. And in his view, trust was the one and only true foundation for a prosperous society. And this is what leads to his most powerful and maybe his most chilling conclusion. He said, a society can survive poverty, it can survive famine, it can survive hardship. But the one thing it cannot survive is corruption. That widespread loss of faith in its institutions and in each other. Because once that trust is gone, the whole thing just falls apart.
He saw it like a chain reaction, like dominoes falling. It starts at the very top. When the ruler starts cheating the people by debasing the currency, well, then the merchants feel like, hey, why shouldn't I cheat my customers? And pretty soon, regular citizens just completely lose faith that the market is fair at all. And when that belief is gone, the economy doesn't just stumble, it collapses.
And this, right here, is the crucial point. Al-Ghazali wasn't just some dusty medieval philosopher. You've got to think of him as a doctor, a diagnostician for society. And his diagnostic report, written 900 years ago, reads like a terrifyingly accurate analysis of our own 21st century economy. I mean, just look at the parallels. His warning about hoarding, that's our modern debate about extreme wealth concentration. His critique of speculation, that perfectly describes the insane logic behind cryptomanias and housing bubbles. His fear of currency debasement, that's the core of every argument we have about inflation. And his warning about corruption at the top, come on, that's the story of our political gridlock and why trust in institutions is at an all-time low. But here's what might be his most profound insight of all. We tend to think of the economy as a machine, right? A complex thing with levers and dials that experts can tweak. Al-Ghazali's view was totally different and way more radical. He saw it as a living thing, a moral ecosystem built entirely on human choices, our shared values, and, that word again, trust. Ultimately, his message comes down to something incredibly simple, but also incredibly powerful. Fairness isn't just a nice to have. It's not a luxury. It's a non-negotiable requirement for a stable economy. His final verdict was this: where justice is lost, prosperity cannot remain. In other words, when people stop believing the game is fair, the game itself is over. And so, this 900-year-old warning echoes through time and becomes a question for us, right here, right now. We are living in a time of incredible financial anxiety and plummeting trust in our institutions. So the question that Al-Ghazali leaves us with is a simple one, and it's a scary one. What happens when our trust finally runs out?